Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The V-22 Osprey, like all military aircraft, is only as good as it is safe. If maintenance issues or even worse, significant mechanical failures endanger the life of our service members, then the United States military cannot rely on the Osprey's unique capabilities, no matter how unique those capabilities may be. In the last 2 years, the V-22s have been involved in 4 major fatal accidents, which have resulted in the deaths of 20 service members just in the last year. These are catastrophes where American service members lost their lives. And it's not just a problem with the Osprey. In military aircraft across the board, safety and readiness metrics are dropping. So far this year, Army aircraft have experienced twice the rate of major incidents than any year in the last decade. Air Force major incidents hit a 5-year high in the fiscal year 2023. Despite us continuing to raise our defense budget almost nearing $1 trillion than the one we're currently debating. Mr. Belk, can you explain the reasons underlying this troubling trend?
Congressman, thank you for your question. With respect to some of the specific data you've shared, what I'd like to do is come back with some additional context and response for we can get after some of the more specifics. Generally speaking, what I would say is that as the force continues to transform and shift in the types of training and operations that it's doing to mitigate and address new and emerging threat contexts, this is placing additional stress on the force. Whether or not this translates into additional mishaps or not, we're still looking at very closely, but we're monitoring that very closely to ensure that as we continue to transform as a force, we understand how we do so as we operate and train in the safest manner possible.
Recent data suggests that the military is relying on aircraft that are not meeting readiness goals. In 2022, the GAO released a report that studied readiness among 49 different aircrafts over the span of a decade. GAO found that only one of those aircrafts, met their mission readiness goals every year, and only 4 met their readiness goals a majority of the years studied. And 26 of those aircraft did not meet readiness goals in a single year between 2011 and 2001. This trend is both alarming and unacceptable. I understand that the V-22 has now been approved to return to limited operation, despite there being no clear conclusion of the investigation of the most recent crash. So, Mr. Belk, what did the DoD learn about the accident in its return to flight assessment, and how exactly does that differ from the initial crash investigation?
So, Congressman, if I understand the question correctly, we learned, and I would say when I say we in OSD, we in the with the military departments, learned rather contemporaneously about the incident that we're talking about in November. In terms of the approach, we take and I'll defer to Admiral Chevy to speak to some of the specifics on how we conduct upon notification of a mishap at a military department or service level. What I would say is that from my perspective, we approach this particular incident with the same level of rigor and care and consideration in terms of how to get after the fundamental understanding of the events that transpired and led to the incident, and then the mitigation steps that need to be taken as we learned information to ensure the continued safest environment, operating environment, and training environment for our service members, and then what, if any, steps to include the stand down that Admiral Chevy alluded to continue the safest environment possible.
Yeah, I mean, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Cranford, the squadron commander where the most recent crash occurred, stated, quote, "We're looking at 750,000 flight hours of history making data-driven decisions," end quote. And so what we're looking for is more transparency in terms of this data. We want to know what y'all are finding out from it, because transparency equals heightened scrutiny, and we need that heightened scrutiny right now as we've lost 20 service members in 1 year. So, Mr. Belk, your job is to ensure the readiness of the total force. So where does the fault lie for the mission readiness failures that GAO identified, and will you take responsibility for addressing them?
So, Congressman, I can assure you that the department at every echelon and every level takes very seriously matters of accountability upon understanding the facts and circumstances around a particular event, and then what, if any, steps need to be taken to either hold organizations or individuals accountable for errors or actions that need to be held accountable for. So upon understanding those circumstances and learning those events, you have my commitment that we will continue to do those things that need to ensure that accountability is meted out and addressed upon learning about the specifics in those instances. I think also, as Admiral Chevy alluded to, some of these investigations remain open, but what I can assure you is those close out, we will be in a position to maximize the amount of transparency about the information that we learn from those investigations to this committee and elsewhere within the Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, because the GAO report that found that 26 different military aircraft did not meet the readiness goals in any of the years that they were studied is a cause of great concern. We don't want to be in this same place a few years from now with a different aircraft with 20 new service members who lost their lives during a training mission. Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Mr. Biggs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this committee, and I acknowledge